The Roman Empire was built on trust, and the foundation of that trust was the coin. Every denarius carried not just silver, but the promise of Rome when a soldier marched into battle, when a farmer sold his grain, when a merchant crossed the seas. The denarius was the language of value. It was more than money. It was power you could hold in your hand, stamped with the image of emperors, stamped with the glory of Rome. The empire stretched from the deserts of Egypt to the forests of Gaul, and everywhere, Roman coins were respected. But coins are only as strong as the silver within them, and emperors soon realized a dangerous truth. They could cheat their people without raising a sword. They could rob their citizens without storming their homes. All they had to do was change the silver content of the coin. This trick, called debasement, was not obvious at first. The coin looked the same. It carried the same face of the emperor. It glittered in the sun, but beneath the shine, it was weaker. It carried less silver, less honesty, less value. The first great scammer to play this game was Nero, infamous for cruelty, infamous for vanity, and infamous for burning the wealth of Rome as easily as he played his lyre. Nero lived like a god. Golden palaces, fountains, banquets, endless games. His appetite was limitless, but appetite comes at a price, and Nero was drowning in it. The treasury was strained. His projects demanded more gold. The people groaned under taxes, yet the emperor refused to slow down. So he turned to a new weapon, the mint in 64 CE. Nero reduced the silver content of the denarius for the first time in Roman history. He cut it down from 100% to about 90%. It sounds small, but it was the beginning of an empire-wide scam. The people still accepted the coin because trust lingers longer than metal. But merchants noticed, money changers noticed, and slowly, prices began to rise. Bread, oil, wine, meat, all became costlier. The people did not know why, but they felt it. Imagine a Roman baker. He brings flour to the market. He counts his coins carefully, but at the end of the day he finds he has less than before. The coins gleam in his hand, but their power shrinks. Slowly, silently, invisibly. Nero had discovered the silent tax, a tax nobody could escape, a tax that robbed the poor more than the rich, a tax that did not require soldiers or whips, only the mint. It was the perfect scam, and once the door was open, other emperors rushed through it. The denarius, once pure, now carried a disease of fraud, and it would spread for centuries, hollowing Rome from the inside. Rome was not just a city, it was a machine. A machine fueled by armies. Soldiers were its steel backbone. They marched across deserts, crossed mountains, and carved the empire into the map of the world. But soldiers were not free. They were expensive. Their loyalty was bought with gold and silver. An emperor who failed to pay his troops was an emperor who did not survive. The Praetorian Guard could crown or kill within a heartbeat. The legions on the frontiers could make or break dynasties. Every emperor knew this. Power was not just about politics. It was about pay. By the 3rd century, Rome's expenses were rising like floodwaters. Endless wars in the east, rebellions in the provinces, barbarians pressing at the borders, and emperors spending fortunes on spectacles to distract restless citizens. The treasury was bleeding, and the people could not be taxed further without breaking. Enter Emperor Caracalla, brutal, ruthless, remembered for massacres, but also for one cunning financial trick. He understood the loyalty of soldiers was his throne, so he doubled their pay. Imagine the joy in the camps, soldiers cheering, their pockets heavier. Their loyalty tied to Caracalla, but doubling pay was easy to promise, impossible to afford. The treasury was already thin, and Caracalla was not willing to cut back on luxury. So he turned to the mint, following in Nero's footsteps. But pushing the scam further, Caracalla introduced a new coin, the Antoninianus. It was supposed to be worth 2 denarii, yet it contained only about 1.5 denarii worth of silver. It was fraud carved into metal, an illusion stamped with the emperor's face. At first, people accepted it, because Rome's money had always carried the weight of power. But quickly, merchants saw through the trick. They adjusted prices. Bread that once cost 1 coin now cost 2. Wine doubled, oil doubled, the poor struggled. The soldiers laughed with their new wages, but in truth, they too were being robbed. Imagine a Roman market, the air thick with voices, merchants calling, customers bargaining, coins clinking on wooden stalls. Now picture the same market after Caracalla's reform. A woman holding 2 Antoninianus coins, hoping to buy grain, the merchant shaking his head, demanding 3. The coin shines, but its shine is hollow. Debasement was a poison, and like poison, it spread slowly, silently, weakening the empire from within. By the mid-3rd century, the silver content of the Antoninianus dropped even further, from 50% to 30 to 20, until at times it was little more than bronze washed with silver. Citizens could feel the scam in their stomachs. Food prices skyrocketed. The baker charged more. The butcher charged more. The oil seller demanded extra. Salaries rose, but never enough. Savings melted away. Trust dissolved. The empire that once prided itself on order and law was now trapped in a cycle of fraud. Emperors minted debased coins to pay soldiers. Soldiers demanded more pay as coins weakened. Prices rose and the cycle turned again, endlessly, each emperor deeper in the scam than the last. It was as if Rome had built a giant furnace, and into that furnace they were throwing the very foundation of their economy, burning trust to keep the illusion of strength alive. Historians call it inflation, but for the people of Rome it was survival. For the poor it meant hunger. For the middle class it meant ruin. For the rich it meant finding safer ways to hoard wealth. Gold, land, and trade goods became more valuable than coins. Because coins had become lies, the streets of Rome whispered with anger. The coins in a man's purse clinked, but they no longer sang of power. They rattled with fraud. Caracalla's Antoninianus was supposed to be a triumph. Instead, it became the symbol of Rome's decline. The empire had found its easiest scam, and like all easy scams, it came at the highest price. The marketplace of Rome, once a theater of abundance, turned into a battlefield of survival. Stalls that overflowed with olives, bread and figs now demanded double, triple the price. The poor woman with a basket of bronze coins found them slipping through her fingers like dust. The baker weighed his flour carefully, his eyes suspicious, no longer trusting the shine of coins, only the weight of silver within. If a coin felt too light, he pushed it back across the counter, muttering, "Bring me real money, trust." The invisible glue that held Rome together was gone. Merchants distrusted customers. Soldiers distrusted the state. Citizens distrusted emperors. Everyone knew the game. Everyone knew the scam. But there was no escape, because the empire itself was the scammer. Hyperinflation followed like a storm. Prices spiraled upward beyond logic. A loaf of bread that once cost 1 denarius now cost 50, then 100. Wages rose, but always too late, always too little. The people felt like they were running on shifting sand. Never steady, never safe. Ordinary Romans adapted in desperate ways. Some hoarded foreign coins, Greek silver, Egyptian gold, anything that held real value. Others bartered goods directly. A sack of grain for a pair of sandals. A jug of oil for a bundle of firewood. Coins jingled in pouches. But fewer and fewer people wanted them. The empire's streets echoed with anger. Riots broke out in markets. Crowds shouting, "Bread, bread, where is our bread?" Soldiers sent to keep order sometimes joined the mob, their own pay worth less by the day. A soldier holding a handful of Antoninianus coins looked at them with disgust, muttering, "Is this the glory of Rome?" Emperors came and went, each one promising reform, but none daring to stop the cycle. They needed soldiers. Soldiers needed pay, and the easiest solution was always the mint, so the presses never stopped, churning out millions of worthless coins, flooding the empire with shiny lies. Imagine the sound of the mint, hammers striking metal, day and night, coins rolling out, the emperor's profile stamped proudly, but behind that proud face was desperation. Every coin another wound in the body of Rome. The middle class, the artisans, the small landowners, they were the first to fall. Savings evaporated, debts mounted, property was sold for scraps, many slipped into poverty. swelling the desperate crowds in the capital, while the rich retreated into estates, hoarding gold and land, building walls between themselves and the chaos. Inflation became more than numbers. It became fear. Fear that tomorrow's money would be worthless. Fear that bread would vanish. Fear that the empire itself was rotting from within. A whisper spread through taverns, through markets, through soldiers' camps. Rome is rich in power, but poor in honesty. Our rulers cheat us with coins and call it law. Foreign traders mocked Roman currency, demanding payment in gold, refusing the debased silver. The empire that once dominated trade was now humiliated, its money laughed at, its power questioned. The collapse of trust was not just economic, it was spiritual. Romans had believed their empire was eternal, their money a symbol of divine favor, but now even the gods seemed silent. Temples filled with prayers for prosperity, yet the markets outside echoed with hunger. Some historians say this was the true beginning of Rome's fall. Not the barbarians, not the battles, but the scam in the mint. A slow poison that ate away at loyalty, stability, and faith. The empire could still build monuments, still march armies, still conquer lands, but inside, in the lives of its citizens, the rot spread. Every coin a reminder that their rulers had betrayed them. The denarius had once been Rome's pride, a silver coin trusted across the world. But by the time of debasement, it was little more than a joke, a relic of past glory. Hyperinflation was not just numbers on wax tablets. It was hunger in a child's eyes. It was anger in a father's shout. It was despair in a mother's silence. And so, in the great story of Rome, one of the greatest scams was not played by an enemy, not by thieves, but by emperors themselves. Men who traded trust for power, silver for bronze, and truth for lies. Rome, the eternal city, was corroded not only by swords, but by coins. The scam of debasement did not vanish when the emperors who caused it died. It lingered like a shadow, shaping Rome's destiny for centuries. Every child born in the 3rd century inherited coins that looked like silver, but felt like lies. The very currency of their lives was built on deception. Trust once shattered was never fully restored. The empire limped forward. Military campaigns continued, cities expanded, aqueducts still carried water, but beneath the surface was a cancer. The people no longer believed in the promises of their rulers. An empire without trust is like a body without blood. It may walk, it may fight, it may roar, but inside it is already dying. Economists today look back at Rome and see a warning, a red light flashing through history. When rulers cheapen money, they cheapen the bond between themselves and their people. The spiral of debasement forced Rome into desperate experiments. New coins were introduced, reforms promised, but the cycle repeated, each fix temporary, each emperor tempted by the same shortcut. Diocletian, one of Rome's most powerful rulers, tried to freeze prices by decree, commanding that bread, meat, and clothing must not rise in cost. But laws cannot fight inflation born from deceit. The markets laughed, prices rose anyway. Soldiers still demanded pay, merchants still refused debased coins. Constantine, years later, tried another solution, a new coin of pure gold, the solidus. And for a time it worked. Trust flickered back, gold shone brightly, but the lesson was bitter, silver and bronze. The coins of the common man were ruined beyond repair. Only the rich dealt in gold, leaving the poor trapped in a broken system. The empire survived, yes, but it survived in fragments. Loyalty was thinner, faith weaker, rebellions more frequent. The scam at the mint had broken something deeper than economics. It had broken the soul of Rome. Archaeologists today dig through Roman ruins and find hordes of coins buried in jars, hidden by families who hoped to protect their savings. Coins that were never retrieved, because the owners likely died in wars, in famine, or in despair. When those coins are examined, the story is clear. Bright silver fades into dull bronze, the timeline of collapse written in metal. The ordinary citizen learned to live in suspicion. They weighed coins, tested them with teeth, measured their thickness, no longer trusting emperors. They trusted their own hands. The scam also reshaped society. Wealth concentrated more and more in the hands of elites who controlled land and gold. While the poor and middle shrank, squeezed by inflation and broken currency, inequality grew, bitterness spread. When the barbarians finally pressed at the gates, many citizens did not defend Rome with passion. Why defend a system that had betrayed them for generations? Why fight for emperors who had stolen not with swords, but with coins? Historians often debate the fall of Rome. Some point to invasions, others to politics. But in the quiet halls of economic history, the scam of debasement stands tall, proof that a nation can rot from within, not because of enemies, but because of lies told in metal. The lesson stretches beyond Rome across centuries, into modern times. Every empire, every government, every bank faces the same temptation. The temptation to cheat money, to water down trust, to solve today's problems by stealing from tomorrow. And each time, history whispers the same warning. Once trust is broken, it is almost impossible to mend. Once people realize the currency in their hand is false, they question everything: rulers, laws, gods. The very idea of stability, Rome's scam lives on as a cautionary tale, carved not in stone but in the memory of civilization. When coins lose value, nations lose loyalty. When money is a lie, power becomes fragile. The empire that conquered the world with legions, with discipline, with roads stretching to the horizon, was undone in part by tiny circles of metal, a silent scam, a hidden poison. And so the story ends, with a lesson sharper than any sword. Money is not just currency, it is trust, it is faith, it is the invisible empire upon which every visible empire stands. Betray that, and even the mightiest will crumble. Rome's coins still sit in museums, dull, thin, broken. They are relics not just of a civilization, but of a scam, a warning etched forever in history.